I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Good morning and welcome to the challenge. As always, first and foremost, we want to thank God for another opportunity and thank you, the viewers, for tuning in. This morning we want to talk education, and we want to talk education with the parents of children within the greater Hartford school system because we want our specific opinions to be ones which come with a direct impact, if you will, and something that you, quite frankly, can relate to. I'm here with a dear friend of mine, Victor Thomas. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Victor.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I wanted you to come this morning specifically because you have kids who are in the school system in the greater Hartford area. And I know it's not necessarily a part of the Hartford Public School, but it is a part of the school systems, if you will. And I think a lot of us are just trying to sort through how this thing is structured. You've got the Hartford Public School Systems, you've got CREC, Capital Region Education Council, and then you've got other entities like Fuse and things like that floating around. Help us to understand. I know you specifically have had an interest for quite some time, and I quite frankly have relied upon you to help me get through this maze because I think our viewers need to understand more about what's going on with those entities and how those entities impact our community and impact our kids more specifically, and how we're impacted by them. Help us.
Thanks, Russell, for having me on the show this morning. Interesting topic, what's going on, and I'd say across the country in the urban education settings. I think that for many years that administrators of Board of Ed has been looking for solutions as to drive education and test scores and close the achievement gap,
sure.
What have you. And what you're finding now, specifically in Hartford, probably the most exposed in the country at this point, is these smaller incubators, these smaller micro education environments.
And charter schools you're talking about.
Charter schools.
School choice.
Okay. Magnet schools.
And you call them incubators because they only have a small microcosm of students, or you know what, 300, 400, 500 students.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Specifically trying to close the achievement gap.
Sure.
In education. What parents fail to really to understand is that by design of school choice or open choice or micro environments, but by the pure design of it, it poses a few challenges. Many times there's limited resources within those environments.
Okay.
Many times there's non-qualified professionals in those environments.
So if you've got a kid who's got special needs, that charter school or their school choice may or may not be equipped with the right kinds of professionals to deal with those.
Specifically in the facility,
okay.
They would have access to those resources, but they would have to go by putting together MOUs to procure those for that particular student, which is quite different from the traditional education model.
Right.
Because you will have all those resources in the building, in the facility,
I got you.
to administer that, from the psychologist to the teacher to the specialty, whether it's language or specialty in reading. But the challenge is, with these different type of, let's say, micro environments, your CRECs of the world, your Fuses of the world, your Goodwin schools of the world, your partnerships and alliances with universities, Trinity and University of Hartford. The challenge with that is that a lot of parents think that their child is getting somewhat of a better education, a better opportunity. All we've really done, bottom line, is reshuffle the deck and how education is administered. Then you have this new thing that's out now. It went from
So, but they say, I mean, when you say reshuffle the deck, so you're saying that they're touting, graduation rates of 100%, like
Yes.
Capital Magnet School,
Yep.
Capital Prep, Steve Perry,
Yep.
who is a CNN host,
Yep.
Those kinds of folks who, purport to have such great success. Quite frankly, it really isn't making that much of an impact. And you're saying that it's just reshuffling of numbers?
from a macro approach, absolutely not. It's just reshuffling their
So
numbers.
you're saying because he's only got a small amount of
Absolutely.
students, 500, 600, 700 students, that if he's graduating 50 or 100 students at a clip, if he's graduating 100% of those, still in the grand scheme of things, because there is still another 5,000 or so students
right.
left behind, that his 100% really hasn't made that much of an impact.
Absolutely not,
at all.
because the city of Harvard graduation rate in 2011 was at 60%. The highest average in the country is 82%, which is the Maryland and Virginia school district. Now, if you look at how resources are deployed, you understand why the Maryland and Virginia school districts are at 82%, 81%, 82% for Maryland, 81% for Virginia. So when you look at taking a rate, a percentage, right, and spreading across maybe 15 or a dozen or so schools, right, you're gonna get an environment that's gonna have a very low rate of graduation, an environment with a very high rate of graduation, because there's a process as to which the students are recruited based upon the theme, based upon the student need, based upon the ideal of the particular school. So you're right. It is kind of flustered and manipulative number when you report that out.
Yeah.
But the real number we need to look at is the 60% rate. Is that good enough for an urban district? That's the real number.
Yeah.
Steve Perry number 100% isn't the real number. It's a real number for his school, but across the district, city of Hartford, district is 60%, and I'm sure your Bloomfields and Windsors and Manchesters is probably about the same average, 60, 70% of graduation rate. Wow. So are we really solving the problem by creating these smaller micro environments? No, we've just shifted how these resources are playing amongst it.
There was at one time in the greater Hartford area only 3 high schools, I'm told.
Yep.
There was a Buckley High, there was a Weaver High School, and there was a Hartford High School.
And a Prince Tech, let's say 4.
And a Prince Tech.
Yep.
And that accounted for all of the students in the Hartford area attending
9 through 12.
9 through 12.
Yep.
So now how many schools are there?
I think there's over a dozen. I counted 15.
15 high schools?
Yeah, and 15, probably 16 counting Prince Tech now.
16 high schools,
yep,
where there used to be 4.
This is before.
So now you've got these smaller
learning
environments who purport to have better education,
yep,
when essentially what they're doing is they're picking students to attend based upon certain themes.
There's some criteria.
And some criteria, with a lack of the same resources within the facility,
yep,
but somehow they're supposedly providing better education for our students. Is that
That's
what I'm
exactly
hearing?
that's essentially what's happening. But here's a new challenge that educators are facing right now. Since 1973, 74, maybe my numbers are off, it was administered these standardized tests. I think they were called as CMTs, Connecticut Mastery Test.
Right.
I must have taken them. Your kids probably must have taken them.
Yes, they did, yeah.
The challenge behind that is that when they create these smaller environments, what you had was educators and administrators teaching to the test, right? Because they know how to test or administer, they know how it's scored.
Right.
Now nationally, they come out with this new theme called Common Core, and what the Common Core does is supposed to, we need to integrate learning and reading and math across all concepts, the core concepts in education itself. So now they added this whole Common Core because people caught on to it. They're teaching to the test. That's why your test scores are higher. Because now you have teachers that can skill and drill, and they teach to the test. And of course, you're going to get a higher tick in test scores.
Right.
And what tends to happen if you're teaching to the test because that's what the teachers is mandated to do.
Right.
And that's where the funding is coming from.
Right.
What tends to happen, you're going to get higher test scores because the teacher is not spending much more time on other substance things in the classroom other than how to pass this test.
Right.
Because we need to get higher test scores in order to have this great school, in order to say that we closed the achievement gap. Well, what is the real achievement gap number? Here's the real achievement gap number. The real achievement gap is when a kid graduates from any high school in this country, right, and can't get into your standard 4-year institution, right? Or once they get there, they can't perform at a certain level. That's the real test.
Yeah.
Whether you graduate, whether you graduate in 10% or 60%.
Right.
The real achievement gap is really what we talked about before on your show.
Yeah.
Are we providing our kids with the essential tools and utilities to perform in the real world?
Right.
If you're just teaching my kids to take a test, you're not teaching my kids how to think.
Yeah.
So now they bring this Common Core. We're
Right.
going to teach these kids how to comprehensively take everything they learned, right, and think through it. However, I like that theme. I think that's the right direction to go. And I commend educators. And I'm not here to bash educators.
But they won't talk about it, so let's talk about them.
I really applaud educators on their efforts on trying to get kids to learn. And every kid learns different. We know all the variables that ties into it. The challenge is, Russell, the real challenge with the Common Core, and you look at how the kids are going to be assessed, it's really a real baseline assessment. I'll give you an example. I was in a meeting, and they made mention how these kids are going to be assessed on a Common Core. Well, when they read a paragraph, they're going to be tested on whether they can identify the topic, main idea, and the body. Well, that's easy, right? But are they going to be tested on the quality of writing, quality of punctuation? Right? So you can manipulate by what you're going to test the standard and score the kid on that particular standard, as long as they pass the standards.
Right.
What about the quality of work? What about the real comprehensive of the work? I wish I had the pictures to throw up on the screen. My daughters did a project just Sunday night. One of my daughters, I call her artsy fartsy. I know she's going to be in the arts and dance, right?
Sure.
So anything objectively, she's going to rush through it. Long as she passes the objectives of the assignment, it's done.
Sure.
Quality is not key to her.
Right.
Long as it's done.
Right.
I know that she knows that. I have another daughter, right, where everything, she's very meticulous with things.
Yeah.
Right. Quality.
So quality, it means everything.
Everything to her.
Sure.
Right. Unbelievable. They got the same grade.
Well,
because the teacher graded them on long as you objectively passed the standard.
Right.
And I went to them both.
But you don't feel like they're going to be prepared.
Absolutely not. Because here's what happens.
Either one.
Either one. Because
they don't have the balance that they should have.
Absolutely. Because here's the challenge I find just in that exercise in my household. The challenge I had personally was that, Autumn, there's no way your boss is going to say this work is acceptable.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's no way. You shouldn't have received a 18 out of 20 on this assignment. McKenna, you barely met half the objectives on it because the quality was there, right? You're going to get to 18 out of 20. So what is the real achievement gap? Right? Educators aren't being pushed to solve those particular type problems. I just so happen to have kids in the same grade, so I can see the differences in the classroom and the difference in the personality of the kid. So when you go back to the choice schools, the theme schools, how they instituted, Russell, I think what we really have is we found a way to basically to rescore how schools and administrators and education and management companies can be held accountable. Number one reason why I think there's a whole lot of money is thrown at education. And I think when it comes down from the federal government, they say do something with it.
I think part of what you're going to get, though, is that from an academia perspective is that the best that they can hope for is to teach people concepts.
Exactly.
And because of that, the most that you're going to get from them, whether they intend to go into a vocation or continue an academic career, is somebody who will have a conceptual understanding of things and how things work.
Yeah, exactly.
Real world, it's something that you just referred to, is very often left out of the equation, in my opinion, and I think it has been for quite some time. It is, I think, part of what has left us with, kids, if you will, and a system really that isn't really producing the quality of product or students that it really should. This area to me, I think it really deserves and requires a whole lot more discussion. Just recently, Steve Perry, the CNN guy who has been touted, throughout the country, has one of the most successful educators in the country when it comes to kids in schools, was rejected. But now I'm being told he has been accepted because they believe he should be given the opportunity, to lead an additional school and to have more students participate in the school that he has. So something's got to give, is what I'm essentially saying. It seems to me that somebody's got to, because we're still not producing the product.
Let's just cut to the chase, right?
Yeah.
And my belief, personally, my perspective is that changing the management team, right, sometimes is not going to change the product, right? I think the disconnect that educators and politicians do not want to address is connecting the community, and the product come from those community being the kids to the classroom. Steve Perry is not going to change what kid comes to his classroom unless he can hand select them.
Yeah.
Those kids still going to have certain challenges.
Right.
He can change the management team as to who administers education.
Right.
But until we, from a community standpoint, fix the things that's outside of the school and the playgrounds of the school, which has an economic impact, social injustice, right, and disparity in those particular areas, we're going to have issues with urban kids in the classroom. A lot of folks don't want to have that conversation.
Right.
Many of our kids, depending on the parent they have at home, are blessed to have certain parents that can steer them and hold them accountable and take them in a certain direction. Mm-hmm. Many of those kids don't have that.
Yeah.
When you don't have a parent, don't have a high school education, you're challenged. Or if he or she doesn't have a job, or the meal's not on the table, that kid has a different behavior issues. So the issues that they're dealing with in the classroom is not a management issue. It's definitely not a management.
Right.
In my opinion, I think teaching is the hardest job ever.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody can teach. But I think a person who qualifies and decides to be a teacher, I think they're good enough to teach the kid. The issue is, that being said, the issue is really rely on, do we really know how to teach these kids?
Yeah.
That's the issue. Because the folks who's writing the curriculum, they don't live on Wadsworth Street, Albany Avenue, Blue Hills Avenue.
And they don't live in it.
They don't live in the area. They don't deal with those community issues.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
It's a disconnect.
Well, my challenge is being able to get all this in one show. I tell you, we have to continue this conversation.
Yep.
We have come to a close, unfortunately, abruptly and too quickly, but we will continue. But we want to thank you for just your contribution so far, and we will look forward to the next time. Remember, be blessed.
Hi, I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching Access TV.